lazy, entitled, no work ethic, and do not care about work. So when I surveyed about 100,000 managers a couple of years ago, they were all the answer to one question. What do you think of your Gen Z team at work? So we've got some real work to do, guys. Sounds all very positive, don't you think? Lazy, entitled, no work ethic, things we love to hear. But I'm being deadly serious. This is a real issue. Like, it's tough, it's hard, and managers ask me this question almost every single day. Like, how on earth do I manage my Gen Z team? And I have a Gen Z team. I think, is Levi classed as Gen Z? 1996. Technically, yes. She's on the cusp. So Tisha is definitely Gen Z. She's sat smiling. I'm sure she's gonna be laughing at lots of the things that I say in this episode. I have a Gen Z team. I have Gen Z family. I have Gen Z friends. I'm 1995, so I think I'm technically just millennial. Although sometimes, yeah, okay, I'm fine. I'm very millennial. But sometimes I do try and pretend to be Gen Z. So if you ever hear me doing like TikTok trends and stuff, that's why. I'm just trying to stay young. And today's episode is sponsored by Custard. I mean, it's not technically sponsored. It's still my business. But I want to talk to you a little bit about Custard before we get into this. Now, Custard is a culture intelligence platform. We have spent the last 8 months building it now. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of tech that is built for managers. So Custard will essentially survey your team. It's a pulse survey, so we don't have to do any more of the annual, lengthy, boring, long surveys. So it's a pulse survey, meaning it takes 30 seconds, that's all, for your team to answer. They go 8 a.m. every Friday morning. And the questions have been built with an organizational psychologist. They are 154 questions that have been built in a way that makes sure your team can give you the right feedback that you need on the culture, on your leadership, on the business, to improve and to build an excellent, excellent culture and to be an incredible manager. It's the piece of tech that I just wish I had like 5 years ago, to hear from our team, to get feedback from our team, but then show the team that we're listening. So Custard is built, it's a culture intelligence platform, just meaning we get the information directly from our team. It then uses AI to be able to give the manager actions, exact actions, scripts, frameworks of exactly what they need to do about those results and to improve your culture. So go check it out. Our website is just itscustard.com. You can also find the link in any of the descriptions wherever you're listening to this. There's a free trial. It's completely free to test it out. No contract needed. I think you get 14-day free trial. I do know you get a 14-day free trial. So back to the episode, because Custard will absolutely help you manage Gen Z better. But back to Gen Z. So in order to deeply understand how to manage, how to get the best out of your Gen Z team, this episode, I'm going to give a bit of a disclaimer, is going to be full of a lot of nuance. What I mean is, I think the internet nowadays, we've really lost the ability to like hold space for more than one thing to be true at once. What I mean by that is, yes, there are certain members of the Gen Z generation that are lazy, that are entitled, but not everyone. In fact, Gen Z are some of the most hardworking people that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. They've been brought up in a world that's very different to the one that you and I might understand. And by the way, the demographic of this podcast is like, I think our main demographic is 28 to 35-year-olds. And so we're generally millennials here, guys. And millennials, by the way, now make up the most managers in the UK. So most of us will be millennials because most managers are now millennials. But we really have to understand the world that Gen Z grew up in. So they are digital natives. What we mean by digital natives is they grew up with technology. So you and I, probably, if you're similar age to me, we grew up, yes, we had a TV. I started to see mobile phones when I was in secondary school. You know, we started to like hear about them, but we absolutely weren't allowed to take phones to school. I remember even being at sixth form, so right at the end of school, and like, it was weird if you would bring a phone into school. It was strange. And then when I went to uni was really when social media started to be a thing. So obviously we'd had like the MSN and, Facebook was a thing. You'd upload all the photos in the album after a night out. But social media as we know it, like I remember Instagram and Instagram stories first not becoming a thing until I went to uni. You have to remember that the Gen Z teams that are coming into our organizations now, this was their reality. Like they, throughout primary school, growing up, like just always had social media. It was always there. And what that means is, and this is the really important bit, they can smell your bullshit from a mile off. So imagine if you'd have been brought up with like, you know, social media videos, you've been brought up with seeing this really sort of filtered, unauthentic version, highlight reel version of the world. You will go into a workplace, and that's what Gen Z had. You will go into a workplace, then if your leaders try to essentially put on a filter over the information, they try to bullshit us with everything's going well, everything's this, everything's that. Gen Z can smell that bullshit from a mile off. They'll disengage. They know that you're not being transparent. And so they will just switch off. And I think that the big shift that we've seen being made is this shift from the power being in the leadership team and, you know, just doing whatever your boss said just because your boss said to do it, to now being the teams will question it. They need the context. They need the why. They need the understanding. And that really is the big shift. And the reason I tell us to hold nuance here is because I will take as much accountability as I absolutely need to. I will take ownership for making sure that my team, the full team, not just Gen Z, feel a sense of like engagement, connection at work, feel valued. But I also have limits. I also have standards. And so if a team member, whether they're Gen Z or not, was to drop below those standards, whether it's with the quality of work, whether it's their attitude, how they show up, the values that we have in the business, lateness, standard of work, whatever, quality, that still is cause for concern. Just because they're Gen Z doesn't mean we let them get away with it. And so it's like there has to be nuance in this conversation around, yes, we're going to build that belonging and value, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a sec of how we can get the best out of these people. But there is still a limit whereby you have to say, actually, the quality, standard, attitude will no longer be accepted when it gets to that limit. And so make sure you have that limit. And I'm actually going to go through something that I call my TAPES method. This is the method that I talked about in my TEDx talk back in 2024. And I still think that this is a brilliant method for kind of understanding how to best manage Gen Z. So TAPES is an anagram, and the T stands for transparency. Now, the reason transparency is so important to Gen Z, like we've already said, social media has brought us up thinking we need filters, we need to lie, we need to, you know, present the best version of ourselves, be as perfect as we possibly can be. Whereas Gen Z, like, they know that that's not the truth. They have grown up, like us millennials, we grew up in a world where a business would hide things. You would hide things like the profit and loss. You would hide salaries. You would hide, you know, are we bringing new people in? Are we making redundancies? All of it was very hidden and kept behind closed doors. And I remember I read a book that I will recommend till the cows come home, and I've probably already mentioned it on this podcast at some point. A book that's called No Rules Rules, The Culture of Reinvention, and it's written out by the Netflix co-founders. And they talked about how, like, their biggest competitive advantage, obviously they were trying to take down Blockbuster. Like, they were fighting one of the biggest, most heavily invested in businesses and industries with their new subscription model for TV. And they said that they were never going to win with product. They were never going to win with marketing. They were never going to win with like doing all the big shiny things, because Blockbuster already had that. They had the big market stake in the game. The way that they won was through culture, was through their internal culture of innovation and high standards. Because if you focus on that internal culture, that ultimately in turn means you can have the best, most creative marketing, the most incredible product. So focus on the culture first. And in the book, one of the things that Netflix puts their culture success down to is transparency. They have a whole chapter called Open the Books. And in that chapter, they essentially talk about how huge things changed for them internally when they started being more transparent with their team. They started building out something called a stakeholder report, which I eventually started using inside Go Proposal and now do with the team in Custard and Fresh Leadership World, which is building a monthly report for the team that shows a version of the P&L. So it shows them revenue, it shows them profit, it shows them if we're bringing new people in, if, you know, and you can present this in like a quarterly meeting. It shows where we made most money, where we lost money, where we made the least money. It shows like highlights, lowlights. It essentially just gives your team this deeper, transparent understanding of what's happening under the hood of the business. And so many businesses still shy away from that. Maybe because we're embarrassed, we fear judgment, but we shy away from it. And so whatever your version of that stakeholder report is, try and build it out. It might not be that you have access to all the business's financial information, and that's okay. But what is it in your team that's the stakeholder report? Could it be like the culture scores from Custard, for example? Could it be the strategy, that the changes that are happening in the business that normally happen above you, but you have the opportunity to bring your team along for that journey. Another way is just being transparent is when we delegate, when we give them things to do, provide as much context as possible, because it's that context and connecting it to the why that helps to show them, I'm not just handing you a random task to do. I'm telling you the context. I'm telling you sort of why that's important. So being as transparent as possible, because they can smell the bullshit. And so don't try to lie to them. Like, don't try to make things out to be more positive than they are. We have to be transparent with Gen Z if we expect any sort of great work out of them, if we expect them to not switch off and engage. And to be fair to us, we have tried, I feel as though as the working world, the leadership world, we have tried so many things when it comes to managing Gen Z. We have tried like the open plan offices, unlimited holidays, work from home, then don't work from home, then get the ping pong office. I feel like that was a millennial thing, to be fair. But we've tried all these things, and none of that, we seem to still not quite understand how to manage through them. And I also think, some of the great feedback that I got off the back of my TEDx talk about Gen Z was that these aren't just principles that Gen Z want. These are things that the entire workforce want. Gen Z just now have the language, they have the, backing to push for these things because they've grown up with them. And so I think when we start to change the world of work for a certain generation, it's moving us all forward. It's moving us all into a much more like people-driven, positive workforce. And so just bear that in mind. So the A in TAPE, step 2, is authenticity. And the reason authenticity is so important for Gen Z is because we were brought up in a world of this kind of fake professionalism. So, it was wear a uniform, get told off if your uniform looks slightly wrong, wear shirts to work, even on the hottest day of the year, wear a shirt and a tie and a blazer. And I think that era of professionalism is just so over, and it really I don't even think it's just over. I think it now puts this wall up. It puts up this blockade between the person who is kind of speaking, whether it's the leader, if that leader is in a really fancy shirt and blazer. I remember actually having a call once with, I had an accountant who was potentially going to be my accountant, and had a call with him, speaking to him about his accountancy firm and whether or not it was the right fit for one of my businesses. And he turned up to the call in full suit, like full iron suit, tie, blazer. And I'm not going to lie, I know you shouldn't judge, but it freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, I feel like this person, I'm just there in a hoodie, as I am for most of my work days. And I felt this sense of like, what is this person trying to prove? Like, if he feels as though he has to put on this shirt, blazer, get really dressed up to prove himself to a client or whatever, like, what am I missing? And whether that's right or wrong, maybe I wrongly misjudged that person. But it just, if we go for this like fake professionalism, it puts up a wall because we recognize it. We recognize what is real and what isn't. And so authenticity is so important as a leader when we're wanting to get the best out of Gen Z, because they will recognize when we're not authentic. And so authenticity just comes from things like admitting when we've made a mistake, not pretending we have all the answers, like not trying to be perfect at everything. Not, if we make a mistake, talk about it, admit it. It's okay if we get something wrong, because Gen Z will truly sniff it out. Like, if you do something wrong, you make a mistake, likelihood is other people have already seen it, other people already understand, they know you've done that thing. If you then don't just admit it and kind of laugh it off or talk to people about what you're going to do to turn it around, you just come across as fake and inauthentic. And so it's so, so important that we are authentic. I know that's a bit of a buzzword, but it essentially just means all these walls that we put up around a telephone voice, wearing a suit, like all the kind of professionalism walls that we feel as though we have to put up because we've been told for many years that we have to, try to start to undo those. What is the real you? How do you bring a bit more of the real you into how you're leading? And then the third principle, which is P in the TAPES framework, I think I'm going to argue that this one may be the most important, and it's definitely the most practical, I think, when it comes to managing Gen Z and just managing a wider team, to be honest. The third letter, P, is progression. Now, when we speak about Gen Z, a lot of the time people say to me, How do I keep them motivated? How do I keep them engaged? Like, we actually know that Gen Z are leaving and starting new jobs twice as fast as any other generation. So the issue really lies in this. How do we keep them motivated? How do we keep them moving forward, excited, engaged? And the answer is progression. So if you think about the word motivation, the root word of motivation is motive, which is the Latin word for just motive, moving things forward. It's just that motion. It's that moving things forward at all times. And the reason that we've got P for progression is that your team have to be constantly feeling this sense of forward motion. And, we like to talk about the big stuff, the pay rises, the promotions. They are great for helping people feel as though they're moving forward. Obviously, they're the bigger, wider, more objectively successful steps in a career path. However, if they're not possible, so if you can't get the promotion, get the pay rise to your team members, just think about their other parts of their day-to-day. How are they being moved forward every single day? So small ways you can do this. Just notice what they want. Ask them, what career progression are you looking for? Just by asking them the question, where do you want to be in your career in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time? Tell me, how can we help you get there? How can you help yourself get there? A lot of the time, the answers to those questions aren't always, I want the big salary review or I want the big the big promotion. Sometimes it's just, I want to pick up this skill. I want to learn this new thing and I want to spend more time on this new thing and hone this new thing. We can help them do that, but we won't know that unless we ask. And so go and ask them, figure out what it is that they want, what skill you can help them with. Another way I think you can help people move forward is coaching, help them to understand more things about your world. If you're managing them, most likely you've been in their position before. Not always. Sometimes we manage teams of people that we haven't done that skill, but sometimes you can just coach them and help improve them in that skill. Another way is to remove things from them. So a question that I like to ask the team is, if I could remove one thing from your job that's just getting in the way, it's pissing you off, it's doing your head in, and it's annoying, it doesn't feel like it's moving you forward, what would that one thing be? And when they tell you, maybe you can't always get rid of it straight away. Maybe it's something that needs to be done, but could you automate it? Could you delegate it elsewhere? Could you find a way to systemize it or get an outsourced person to do it? Or is there a way that we can remove it altogether? Just by asking these questions, it's like progression, it's forward motion. It's just them feeling as though they're one small step ahead of where they were yesterday. I think another really simple way we can help people feel like they're really moving forward all the time is making sure we recognize and praise their work. When your team do great things, make sure you praise them for it and tell them specifically what it is that they've done, why that thing is great. Take the time to praise. I think we put so much impetus and effort into having these difficult conversations and, hard feedback, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes the praise can help keep them motivated far longer than anything else. And so make sure that progression, that you're focused on, how do I keep the team feeling as though there's that sense of forward motion and improvement and things getting better? The next one in the tape, so we've done TAPE. E is elastic. So flexibility, it's a big one we're going to be talking about. This is a big, big, big part of the working world nowadays. If you're a millennial like me, you will very much remember the days of working every single day in an office. And that was just the norm. We didn't even question it. I remember one day asking, we did actually, before COVID, Go Proposal, where I was working in 2018, 19, the boss did actually say we could work from home whenever we wanted, but no one ever did it. I remember thinking, if you worked from home, people would think that you were lazy and you weren't doing anything. And so no one ever took it. I think I probably worked from home out of the however many years, 2 or 3 years before COVID, maybe once when I was a bit ill, or I had to, I don't know, it was a really extreme thing to do and it felt that way. Whereas now, oh my God, we're all over. I'm working from everywhere at every which time of day, and so are the team. And I think elasticity is all about flexibility. And I think you can have flexibility with guidelines. So what I mean is, too much flexibility sometimes is detrimental to people, because it's if you've got too many options, if you've got too many things to do, you don't know which one is kind of going to be the best, and you might feel guilty about doing the thing that you want to do. So what I say to that is, build in flexibility, but with guidelines. So, for example, our working policy right now, our work from home policy, and I've done videos on this before, and it will constantly change. Like, I'll probably review this again in a few months and check it's still right. So if you have any feedback on it, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to know like what your perfect work from home policy would be. But our policy at the minute, our flexible working policy is, so obviously we work 5 days a week. We do 2 days of the week in the office, and you can choose what those days are, but generally we'll chat to each other and say like, what day are you in? I think as the team grows, I'll probably set one day where I want everyone in the week. So maybe it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday where I'm like, everyone come in on a Wednesday. And then the other day you can just choose yourself. But right now we're very flexible on what days, but it's 2 days in the office. We also have flexibility around timings. So obviously we work, 7 hours a day? Yeah, 9 till 5 with an hour break. You can work those 7 hours anytime between 7 and 7. And so if you want to start at 7, finish at 3. If you want to start at 11, finish at 7, you can do that. And it just gives people this flexibility with guidelines to say, if you've got kids to pick up from school, if you just want to go for a long run in a morning and you don't want to start work till 10, you can do. And there's a guideline, there's a policy there that's very clearly stating you can do this. If you want to work early and work late, whatever, you can do that. And I think the reason that works really well is it's flexibility, but it's flexibility that people feel entitled to take. And so it's like, if you can, I appreciate a lot of workplaces, you may not have the final call over what that flexibility looks like. But if you can in any way give your team some flexibility around their working hours, I think it goes a huge long way because it gives people this like autonomy, agency, ownership over their own working day. And I work for myself now, and so I have a lot of, I say freedom, it's kind of freedom, but I also feel like it's like I've gone from working a 9 to 5 to working a 24/7, but I still have the choice. Like this weekend, I was with my friends, I was chill, I didn't go on my laptop once, like I really had to relax and enjoy my weekend, and I get to choose to do that. Some weekends, I'm smashing through admin, I'm like, up late, smashing through my work. But the reason I love it is because I have the choice. The reason I love it is because it's my choice to get to choose whether I do that or not. And I want to try and give that to the team as much as possible. I don't want any of them to ever feel as though if on a Friday at 3 p.m. they need to go somewhere, they need to set off early to get somewhere, they can't do it. Because I think that's when people start to feel squashed. And so think about the ways you can create that flexibility. I also think internally, we squash a lot of flexibility by like making people feel as though they don't have autonomy over how they do things. If you think about like completing a report or a task, if you say to your team member, here's exactly the 10 steps I want you to follow to complete this task, and I want you to do it at 9 o'clock every Monday morning, you've removed all sense of ownership, autonomy over that task. If you instead say, look, here's the context, here's why this report's so important, and we do need it for the meeting at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. It kind of gives them back, like, look, if you want to do it on a Friday, you can do it on a Friday. If you want to automate it using AI, you can automate it using AI. If you've got a quicker way of doing it, a better way of doing it, or if you just want to come on a Monday morning and rush your way through it, you're welcome to do that too. It just gives them a bit of agency and autonomy over how they do it. And it's that flexibility, I think, that keeps people more engaged and motivated, because you're not like ruling with this iron fist of you turn up here, then, and do this and do that. And it also gives people space to like have feelings and be able to allow those feelings to come into work. So for example, like just for us women, as our cycle throughout the month, like our period cycle happens, there's some days within that cycle that I just cannot be bothered. I can't be bothered. I've got such a short fuse. Everyone pisses me off. I'm annoyed at everything. Like, you could look at me the wrong way and I'm like walking home like, oh my God, I'm so annoyed. I'm so frustrated. There are other days where you could actually probably punch me in the face and I'd just laugh it off because I wouldn't even be bothered, because I'm so chill. I'm so easy. I'm so like, I love it when people are like, I'm chill, I'm easy. And they're actually, I am a micromanager all the time. I am a control freak all the time. But there are definitely, you know what I mean? Like, you have these ebbs and flows in how you feel, and your team have them too. Like, we're not special in that. And so if they have a day of the week where they can't be bothered, like they've not got 100% energy today, they're at like a 30%, they're just feeling a bit crap, They want to sit in bed and just answer some emails slowly. They want to do the work that feels a bit slower to them. I want them to be able to make that choice and be able to do it because I can and I need that. And then some days we're in the office, we're firing on all cylinders, we're flying around, we're smashing it. But it's just not possible to do it every day. And I think when we don't allow that flexibility for people, that's when they disengage. That's when they feel anxious on a Sunday. That's when they get annoyed at their manager and they start to just lose all sense of like, I don't know, respect and ownership and care over their work because they just feel like a cog in a machine, and that's never what we want them to feel like. So E is elastic. Figure out there must be ways within your day-to-day. You may not be able to control how many days they work from home, whatever, but there has to be something that you have control over as their manager as to how you can kind of hand them back some more freedom and agency over their own time. And finally, S. The S is something that, so Google ran a survey across 200 businesses. It was called Project Aristotle. 200 businesses, thousands of managers, and they were surveying culture. So they were looking at culture inside those businesses and they were saying, what's the difference between wildly high performance teams who show up, are engaged, love the work that they do, versus low performing teams, so teams who don't seem to care, don't hit targets, whatever. And the biggest difference they found was S, safety. So psychological safety, more importantly, was the difference Google found between high performing teams and low performing teams. It was the main important thing. Now, safety, if you go back 500,000 years to when we were hunter-gatherers, we lived in tribes, safety was built in us at the very, very, very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we didn't feel safe, nothing else mattered. If we didn't feel safe, we couldn't even think about socializing, about innovating, experimenting. We couldn't even begin to think about like pushing forward, being engaged, trying new things, because all we're worried about is preserving our safety. And that's how you have to think about your team at work. If your team do not feel safe inside your culture, inside your team, inside your business, you can forget any chance of them innovating, socializing, trying new things, experimenting, moving your business forward. It's all out the window if they don't feel psychologically safe at work. So the ways, and this is down to the manager, by the way. Of course, the wider business culture plays a big part in it. But there's a huge variance in this from manager to manager. And you will know if you've been inside a business where you have a bad manager and someone else has a good manager, or vice versa. You have a really good manager, they have a really bad manager. It's all to do with psychological safety. Now, psychological safety can be simplified. It has a lot of complex nuance to it, but we can simplify it by saying, can your team make a mistake, make a suggestion, speak up, get something wrong without the fear of being vilified or judged? And now these are some questions that are inside Custard as well that you can find out if you go start your Custard free trial. Your team will get asked these questions so you can figure out how psychologically safe they actually feel. It's one of our categories. But for the purpose of this podcast, do your team feel safe to speak up? You should have a good indication of the answer. And the way that you help them speak up and experiment more, the way that you can make them feel more safe, is things like you admitting your own mistakes, you not trying to be perfect, you being their safety net. Like when they fail, when they mess up, don't vilify them for it. Like help them to feel it's all part of this journey that we're on. It's all part of like, we have to do these things, we have to make these mistakes, we have to learn. Now, of course, we need standards. Like we can't just be constantly getting things wrong all the time and there being no repercussions. Like we need to make sure that our standards are still high. It's just that the way I see standards now is that mistakes are part of my standards. Like I have high standards for the work that we deliver with clients, for our social media, for our website, for everything that we do, for our product, our marketing. But those standards remain high by trying new things, making mistakes, and then just writing down what we're not going to do again. So when someone makes a mistake, even if it's something quite tragic, like we've had in the past, people sending the wrong things to clients, big clients, like getting the wrong information, and it really hurts. Like, it feels like a stab in the gut 'cause you've worked so hard to make sure that thing is right, and then someone else does it and it's wrong. But it's a mistake. It's a human mistake. So the conversation I would have with the team at that point would be, what are we doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? Like, what system are you putting in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? And if it does happen again, it's a difficult conversation, right? This is twice now that this has happened. It was a mistake the first time, but this has happened again. What are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because the next time it does, we're going to have a bit more of a tougher conversation about this. And so how are you making your team feel safe? Are you admitting your mistakes? Are you making space for other people to speak up in meetings? Are you being quiet to like allow them, asking them questions, making sure that people don't feel judged? We spoke about icebreakers in a previous episode and how icebreakers can be so powerful. I think icebreakers can be great for like, what's one mistake that you've made at work this week? Like, what's one thing that you've messed up? Because when you ask that question, all of a sudden, people are like, oh, it's okay to talk about these mistakes. Like, we don't have to try and be perfect. So tapes, guys, I want you to remember that when we're talking about Gen Z. Transparency, authenticity, progression, elasticity, and safety. Try and create those 5 conditions inside your workplace and watch your Gen Z team members bloom. Now, as I said at the beginning, not everyone will do that. You will still have people in your team who have a low work ethic, who are lazy, who aren't right, who don't share the same values. But once you create those conditions, it becomes a lot easier to spot those people, have the difficult conversation with them, make sure that they get properly managed. But once you create those conditions, I guarantee the other 80%, 90%, you will be able to watch them flourish. You will be able to watch your Gen Z and rest of that team flourish. And guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure you do as a review. Follow us, subscribe, like. All the engagement really, really helps us to continue to grow and invest in creating brilliant episodes. And by the way, if you have a dilemma, we've had some great dilemmas messaged in already. Send an email to hello@theboardroompodcast.com. We will go through all your dilemmas on this pod. We're going to start doing it in a couple of episodes' time because we're starting to build them up now. And I want to do one podcast episode that is kind of like going through everyone's dilemmas at once. And I think we can do that sort of every 4th episode to make sure you get the answers that you need. So hello@theboardroompodcast.com. We'll put it in the link below, in the description below. Send us through your dilemma. We will, of course, keep it all anonymous, but I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next episode.